YouTube, tuber like a tuber, how is it going? It's Multiplier here. Now, let's say you're trying to do something in the music industry. Maybe you're trying to build a following, or get Skrillex to play your track, or get posted on a big channel, or just get some gigs, get some shows, press some buttons, doing DJing. Now, you have to bear in mind you're probably competing with a lot of people. Not just 50 or 100, but maybe 50,000 or 100,000. I mean, that's genuinely how many demos the biggest labels get. It's a lot more than a few thousand. It's many, many, many thousands. So it could be 100,000 people you're competing with to get on a big label. Therefore, for it to work, you really do need some form of advantage, some edge, some advantage, something that separates you from everybody else. And I think it's personally quite important to actually know what your advantage is. Think about it. What is your advantage? Are you, say, do you have the first mover advantage? Are you one of the first, say, 30 or 40 people making a certain type of sound? That gives you a big edge. That's how I got my foot in the door years ago, releasing on Beatport, doing the whole Moombaton thing. Take almost any genre. Most of the biggest guys doing it were one of the first people to do it. Other advantages could be personal connections. Maybe you personally know somebody in an influential position. So in the case of a guy called Sav, he knew Skrillex, which is clearly an advantage. In fact, he didn't just know Skrillex, he also had video skills. So he filmed videos for Skrillex on tour. So he had two advantages, and that's how he got his foot in the door and made it all happen. Yes, he made good tunes, good songs, and he was proficient, he was good enough, but that wasn't enough. He needed the advantages. Advantages are good. You will need some form of advantage. Other advantages could be just genuinely being better than everybody else, which is statistically unlikely, as there's only, I mean, to be genuinely better than everybody else, that's like a probably one in 50,000, one in 100,000 sort of statistic. Noisier, for example, just genuinely better than everybody else. And they've been doing it for ages, but they are better than everybody else. That's their big advantage. In other words, for you to use that advantage, you have to genuinely be making tracks, not just as good as everybody else, but better. Another advantage could be marketing. Maybe you've got a good marketing strategy or a good look, a good image. Marshmello, for example, that's one of his advantages. Also, personal connections in the industry, for example. But basically, yes, if you have a marketing edge, deadmau5, for example, he had first mover advantage and marketing advantage. So back in the day, he was one of the first guys on Beatport to take it seriously and make electronic music. So he pretty much took over Beatport back in the day, deadmau5. Joel Zimmerman, and then he had a good marketing thing, the ears back before people were doing that. That was his advantage, for example. So you do need to have an advantage, and I think it's very important to know what this is for you. Let me give you some personal experience examples to illustrate this. Now, back in the day, back when I first, so I've been producing 6 months to a year, seven or 8 years ago, we'll go for 7 years ago, I naturally, having only been producing 6 months, wasn't that good. Therefore, because I wasn't very good, I needed some form of edge, some form of advantage to stand out and sort of get my foot in the door, start releasing on Beatport, and have everything else start to fit into place. Now, my favourite genre at the time was dubstep. That's how I got into the music scene, through Skrillex, but it was predominantly dubstep, and then that expanded into electro house, trap, drum and bass, and then now I produce literally everything. For me, it was all about dubstep, but at the time, dubstep was pretty established. It's not as established as it is now, but it was pretty established. And therefore there was just simply no way for me to compete. I had no advantage in the dubstep space over the best people in the world at it. The best people in the world at it were better producers than me. They've been doing it 15 years and they had all the connections. The people I was competing with had all the advantages and I had zero of the advantages. Therefore, what I had to do is take a sound I was quite interested in, not as interested in as dubstep, but still quite excited about, Moombaton, and take advantage of that, because I spotted it right in the early days. So Moombaton, it was being right as it got invented by Dave Nada. He invented it. Lots of the biggest guys were playing it, guys like Skrillex, for example, and most of the biggest guys were playing it, but there weren't actually many people producing it. And it was such a novelty, you simply just had to be one of the guys making Moombaton, and people would play your Moombaton tracks. So there's probably only 50 to 100 people actually making Moombaton one of them was me. And so if you were just one of those people making those tracks, even if they weren't very good, there was some novelty to it. So at the time, if you knew to tag Moombahton on your SoundCloud track, and it didn't even need to be a remix, you could just literally tag Moombahton, and then the 2 or 3 blogs posting Moombahton and people searching for Moombahton because they wanted to play Moombahton and not many people were making Moombahton, they just found your track. It was quite easy. Easy because I had an advantage, a first mover advantage. Now, if you make a Moombahton track, yes, there's still not as many people making it as, say, future bass or dubstep or trap or drum and bass, but there's a lot more Moombahton tracks than there was at the time. There was maybe only a few thousand tracks at the time on SoundCloud, whereas now there's probably 60,000, I don't know, let's say 50,000 tracks. And in fact, that's the advantage I've taken advantage of most often, at least in my career. So sample packs, for example. I got into sample packs just over a year after starting to produce, so 6 years or so ago now, maybe even 6.5 years or so ago. Now, back then, almost nobody was making sample packs. So you didn't even need to be that good. I mean, at the time, I wasn't even that good at making sample packs, but I could email Loopmasters and say, do you want me to make some massive presets for you in the genre trap? And no one else had asked about that before. And so they said yes. And then I made them bumped into the chair, and so as easy as that, to have the opportunity to make a pack of massive presets for the genre trap. And I just simply made them. They were quite good. As I say, not the best in the world, but good enough. And that was a foot in the door, if you like, a bit of credibility. So I could then do the Serum, the first pack of Serum presets for trap. So if you've gone to Loopmasters, type in Serum trap. I did the first pack a year or so after the massive one, but that was because I did the massive one back when almost nobody was doing it. Whereas now, after a company that will remain nameless inspired everyone to make presets themselves. And so now loads of people are trying to do it, which is a good thing, but it makes it more difficult for you as you're competing with thousands and thousands of people instead of anything from 5 to 0 people. First mover advantage. Also, a good thing about being a first mover, being the first to getting in there early, effectively, is by the time then people hop on the bandwagon, if you like, you've actually got a new advantage. You've been doing it a while, so you'll be better at it, and you'll have some social proof, some credibility, some experience in the genre. Maybe you've built up a bit of a fan base already if it's a genre. So then that becomes your advantage. In the case of, say, tutorials, for example, another prime example for me. I mean, I definitely wasn't one of the very first people making tutorials on YouTube, but I started putting out videos on YouTube ages ago. Say 7 years or so ago, back when there was just less. I mean, a lot less than now. I mean, there definitely were tutorials, but a lot less than now. So I could do a video saying how to sound like Skrillex. And then, I mean, it wasn't really much like a Skrillex sound, but people still clicked it. And I mean, that kind of illustrates how few tutorials there were. Now, if you do how to make Skrillex sounds, it's pages like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of videos. So it's if you want to start a channel from scratch, much more difficult. Whereas now, an advantage is, well, I know a lot more because I've been doing tutorials for so long across every genre, doing all the different types from sound design to songwriting, etc. So I do actually know more. One of my advantages now is because I've been doing this so long, I actually know more than most people. You spend pretty much all your time, like me, learning new things and experimenting new things and testing new things and pushing things to the limit and being involved in music production. You end up knowing more than when you're 6 months into it. And so that becomes an advantage. Basically, you need some form of advantage. And I think it's important not to let that advantage be random, but to know what it is and guide your strategy around it. If, say, you do have specific goals. I mean, I suppose one advantage could be just pure luck, but you don't want that advantage. The odds are just not good about pure luck. You're competing for the attention of, say, a big YouTube channel, Trap Nation, for example, and they get 20,000 demos a week or whatever it is, probably more than that. You don't want it to be luck, because you're not only competing on pure luck in that situation, you've got a disadvantage because other people have advantages. So it's just way stacked against you. I suppose my point is, try to figure out an advantage for yourself and try to steer yourself accordingly. My name has been Multiplier, and I will catch you guys on the flippity flip. This video is sponsored by me, my website. As you can see here, I have a whole range of things available, from Serum presets through to Serum tools, samples, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Do check it out, link below, multipliermusic.com, and/or subscribe. Thanks for watching.